Okay, here we are, handheld video mode tonight. I'm gonna try and show you in a few steps just now how we can hopefully create some own Gaussian splatting and do something as simple as record a object. So we're not gonna try and do a room, and we'll start simple on a phone, and let me switch around. Let me pick up an object from the table and get the app ready. Let's use Scaniverse to start with, and then let's go from there. Alright, as you can see around the office, I do have quite a few desks here, but as this is clearly the MacGyvering with mad professor office, I can't have a space where I can easily circulate around the object. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to take this little scale model table, I'm going to take all of this off and stick the table here in the middle. Then I'm probably going to take one of those bottles, like let's say the Veuve Clicquot bottle, and let's scan that bottle standing on that tabletop. And then we can go from there. Okay, now let's grab that table, move it from this corner to this central area here. And then what will be the easiest thing is Gaussian splatter around to object, right? Try and record it as if it's a turntable animation. As a simple thing to do is if you have one of these cutting mats, just use it as your reference frame. So if this is your reference field and you've got all these centimeter grid icons, you can then very easily do your Gaussian split and then later scale your object back to reality in your digital drawing software, right? Because it becomes much easier to scale an object if you've got a frame of reference. Okay, so there's the bottle. And now you can see I can already, if I was doing a photogrammetry recording, I could already walk around it and just record a video. But let me try and show you this, not so much with a video, but just straight using my phone. So we'll go to Scaniverse, right? And once the Scaniverse uploads, it is really simple. All you do is click the button, and then as you can see, you can record a splat or you can record a mesh. So we'll stick to splat, and then it will start initialization. And on my phone, unfortunately, says that I have limited hardware capability, so I've got limited processing. And that's just because this is a nothing phone and not anything fancy like an iPhone 17 or something. So it will be slightly slower in reconstruction. But from that point we can start. So let's start, and it will ask us to point the scanner at the subject and then press the recording button to start recording. And you can see the red hatching that you see around the object. You can probably see it as I move the phone around. That indicates that it is recording it and that it is seeing more, of course, than the bottle. And as we slowly navigate around the bottle, at the moment, of course, we're navigating around the bottle from the top, it in a sense records already this 3D holographic view. And if I slightly pause, you can see that it is starting to see the top of the bottle as well. And that's important because sometimes if there's too much motion, it doesn't recognize the object that immediately or that easily. And then you just let the camera or your phone hover for a little bit. Okay, but that seems to be going pretty well. So from the top, we then want to shift down. You can see it's struggling a little bit with the glass, but we're just going to go slowly around it. There you can see the silhouette of the bottle. Especially the gold paper helps a lot to try and find the structure of that bottle. And I think that this phone normally gives me a warning at about 3 minutes or so. So after 3 minutes it will say, listen, nice try, but you are recording too long for what the hardware of this can process later on. Okay. So again, by simply scanning in multiple orientations, it will see the bottle at different angles, and that's then much better for the texture mapping later on. You can see the bottle's text, Veuve Clicquot Brut, right, becomes more and more visible the longer we scan. And I'm trying to keep track of 2 cameras at the same time, for better or for worse. I have to walk around that one last time. It's taking 2.5 minutes, so hopefully that's enough. Okay, camera is pausing a little bit. Let me put the other camera down as well. And then you can see I can now go and say, okay, scan's complete. You can see I can scan around the object. I can zoom in a little bit to the place where I made the recording. And then I can say process that now. And then it will ask you to keep the phone open while processing. And I'm not going to make you watch that, thankfully. But I will bring the video back once I've processed this on the phone and stuck it back on my computer as a PLY file. I'll see you on the other side. Alright, sorry, I know I said I was going to move on, but let me take a step back. So see now, it says processing complete, which is great, and I can post to map because Scaniverse is an app that allows you to share all your scans with the world, and it's in a sense geotags them. But the other step is to enhance, so basically to edify the original scan, train the model further, or simply save and close. Before I save and close, because I want to keep this as almost like a private model, I can already navigate around the object, right? So it scanned everything pretty consistently from the top. It's interesting that that little metal wire that sits around the top of the bottle, even that, I would say that thickness is probably 0.5 millimeter as a metal string. Even that it was able to capture on something as simple as my phone. So that is then the visible bottle. Of course, you get a lot of reflections of what's happening in the room and us walking around it with the camera in hand. But for now, this is sufficient. And so what we can now do is go to the export button and then say post to map, share link, or export. So export PLY or SPZ, and we'll just stick to PLY for now. And I'm going to upload that straight to our Google Workspace account, I suppose, and then pick it up from there. Okay, here we go again. So this is now the Super Splat editor, and let me go to my desktop files, and let me just bring this over. Here is a PLY file, yeah, and here's an SPZ file. The SPZ file was the one I managed to export actually from Scaniverse, so let's drag that in, and let's actually see, okay, so this is literally how fast that loads. How wonderful is that? And now you can see the splat with the sort of perimeter around the bottle. So what I'll simply do is in the bottom menu bar over here, I can do a rectangular selection, and I can basically then delete and clean up that part of the splat which I don't need. I can also do the lasso selection, so if I want, I can draw basically a shape specifically around the table and try and capture as much of the other information that I don't need. And I suppose there are some floating things here and here and overhead here. And you know, wherever else. But the main key here is that now, with what I have in front of me, all I'm essentially left with is the wooden top and the bottle itself. So I can then go to File, Export, PLY, Splat, SOG, and use the Viewer app. And then exporting that can then be taken into our preferred drawing software, or even something like Xscript, Lixel Cyber Color Studio, and then reinsert this element into a bigger Gaussian splat scene. So then that summarizes that part of the workflow. I suppose from here on out, where this will take us is we're going to take a look at the earliest, or the first release, hopefully sooner than later, of the SketchUp plugin, the SketchUp Gaussian splatting. And that plugin was originally announced as being in private beta on the SketchUp forums in the middle of 2025. So now we're a year further, and I suspect that it's going to be released really, really soon. Excited for that, obviously, and really hoping that over the next couple of weeks or months, we're going to see that then in action. So yes, the high-end scanners are incredible. We get really interesting workflows right now of scanning properties, scanning interiors, and it means that more people can start to begin and explore spatial captures. Now the results, as you can see here with the bottle, the texture isn't perfect. The cleanup still really matters, and the optimization still needs to take place. But honestly, even these simple capture workflows are starting to show us what's possible within Gaussian splatting. So what's important right now is we're not going to wait for the perfect technology. It's just learning how these workflows behave. And then as soon as the technology matures, then let's jump on it and start introducing it into our active daily design studio workflows, right? So I hope this gives you permission, or at least a few more people, to start experimenting with these workflows for yourselves. The technology is still strange, occasionally a bit chaotic, and sometimes computationally alarming, but it's also incredibly exciting. So thanks for spending some time with me. I hope the rest of your weekend unfolds rather wonderfully. Have a good one.